So welcome to ITSS Verona from the China and Asia team. And today we have the pleasure of having with us one of our experts, Dr. Jeremy Alan Garlick. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I will start with a brief introduction. Dr. Jeremy Alan Garlick is the director of the Masaryk Center of International Studies in Prague, at the Prague University of Business and Economics. And his research interests are focused on the Belt and Road Initiative, China relations with Eastern Europe and Central Europe, China relations with the Middle East, and last but not least, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And he recently published two books, one in December 2019. The title is The Impact of China's Belt and Road Initiative from Asia to Europe. And the last one is very recent, in November 2021, Reconfiguring the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Geo-Economic Pipe Dreams versus Geopolitical Realities, which we will discuss later. And he's also the author of various book chapters, peer-reviewed articles, and book reviews, and also is one of the board members of the editorial board of the Journal of Current Chinese Affairs since 2018. So we were just mentioning now your latest book, so I think we can start by asking you to explain the key arguments of reconfiguring the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Geo-Economic Pipe Dreams versus Geopolitical Realities, if you can talk about it in a nutshell.
Okay, so what I did in this book was I came at the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor because I think, like a lot of other people, I had understood that through the corridor, it was a corridor that was going to connect China to the Indian Ocean through the port of Gwadar, connecting up into China through the length of Pakistan, and that the main aim of it was to not only transport goods by that route, but to transport oil, right? To transform China's oil situation. China's worried about its energy security. China was worried about what's so-called Malacca dilemma, which means the possibility of being cut off in the future, maybe by the US, maybe by India or somebody else, that the oil supplies, most of which, 80% of which come from Africa or the Middle East, or even from Latin America, up through the Malacca Straits and up through the South China Sea to China that way. So that the idea of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, as I understood it when I came into it, was to transport oil through a pipeline up into China. Okay, so the conclusion I came to after doing a lot of research on this topic was that the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is not about any oil pipeline, because there is no oil pipeline. There isn't even an oil pipeline planned. This is a complete kind of myth that's been sort of propagated in the media and even by a lot of scholars. So in the book, I analyzed 100 articles in English by various scholars, 100 of the most cited articles. I also analyzed some articles in Chinese, I think about 40. And I found that this assumption that the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is about connectivity from the Indian Ocean to China and is about resolving this Malacca dilemma was very prevalent in the literature as well as in the media. But the facts show that, studying the official CPEC website, the official documentation shows that there is not only no pipeline, there is not even a plan for a pipeline. Some people also mention a railway. There's no plan for a railway. And the reason why this is not planned is because the route that pipeline would have to take through Pakistan is, first of all, there's a lot of security problems inside Pakistan. There's a lot of separatist movements in Balochistan and other regions of Pakistan, so security would be an issue. Another problem is that the border region where the pipeline would have to cross goes through the Karakoram Mountains, which are part of the Himalayas. You'd have to put the pipeline up to 4,500 meters. Where the road goes through the Karakoram Highway between China and Pakistan, there's only one road. That's snowbound. It's closed 4 or 5 months of the year because of heavy snow. You can't even get through there for 4 or 5 months of the year in the winter. So you'd have to build a pipeline that goes uphill. You'd have to insulate the pipeline. You'd have to push the oil up, up this route. It would be tremendously expensive. You'd probably have to drill through the mountains. These are sheer mountains. The road goes along the side of a mountain. You'd have to probably drill tunnels through the mountains. Terribly expensive. And the evidence shows, I even found evidence from Chinese experts saying that they analyzed the cost. They analyzed the cost of building it. They analyzed the cost of transporting the oil. And it really would be uncompetitive with the maritime route. The maritime route is far cheaper, even though it looks longer on the map, and the overland route looks shorter on the map. The overland route would not be cost effective. It would be insecure. There's also the problem that the border region is disputed with India, so you'd also have this problem of stirring up the problems with India even more. So there's a lot of, and another problem with it is it's an earthquake zone, right? It's a heavily prone to earthquakes. It's unstable, geologically in that area. So you'd be dealing with that kind of problem when you're having to plan the building of the pipeline. You'd have to be planning for that as well. So what I found was that if the China-Pakistan economic corridor is not about this Malacca dilemma, is not about this pipeline, then what is it about? And the data demonstrate, what I found from the data is that what is being invested in is purely projects within Pakistan. It's energy, above all, energy projects, transport projects. Pakistan has a lot of problems with energy, doesn't have enough energy, it has a lot of blackouts. So a lot of it is about alleviating Pakistan's energy shortages and improving Pakistan's transport infrastructure. But what we see is, what I would say is China-Pakistan economic corridor is essentially like a Pakistan economic corridor with Chinese investment. It's not about linking to China, and it's not about transforming the region. There are no projects so far connecting, for example, to Central Asia or connecting to Afghanistan. Maybe there will be in the future, but so far this has not materialized. So I really analyze a lot of other issues around this, like about Pakistan's internal politics and about Gwadar, the problems with Gwadar Port. Gwadar Port is located in Baluchistan, which is a separatist region. The locals are not supportive of the project. The locals feel as if they've been oppressed by the central government in Punjab, and they blame the Chinese for being involved with this suppression by the Pakistan central government. And they are a lot of them are very vocally, and not even vocally, against the Gwadar port investment. They're even willing to take violent means to attack the Pakistan security forces, or even stage attacks on Chinese engineers. So there's all these security issues around it as well. So I kind of analyze all of these kind of issues about, that's why I call it reconfiguring the China-Pakistan economic corridor, because I think the image that we've got of CPEC is that it's about this regional transformation, that Pakistan is going to be this hub, that it's going to connect China to the Indian Ocean and all this kind of stuff. And it's really not the case. It's not materialized in that way. And the Chinese investments, which sort of reached a high point in 2015, 2016, 2017, since then have gone down, have slowed down. So we don't see the amount of activity that would suggest this is a transformative project that's going to transform Pakistan and transform the region. But it's more about developing Pakistan's rather, lackluster economy. And I also think it's a label on an old tin. It's a new label on an old tin. The old tin is China-Pakistan Security Corporation, which has been going on since 1962, when there was the China-India border war. Pakistan and China started cooperating to counter India, and it's basically just a relabeling, a new label on that old tin of China-Pakistan Security Corporation to counter India as well, right? So these are the kind of issues that I discuss in the book.
Thank you. That was very clear. Thank you. And still talking about the China-Pakistan economic corridor, what's the real impact of this project on the Pakistani economy, and as well, what's the impact it has on the relations between the two countries, between Pakistan and China?
Again, it's very complicated. The impact it's had on the economy, I think the most positive so far is in the energy sector. I mean, China has built some energy plants. They've built mostly so far coal-powered plants, which is controversial because of the environmental impacts. So this is a problem with the environmental impacts from the coal plants, but they have developed coal power plants. They built some dams. They are also putting in some solar plants, wind power plants, renewable energy as well. So they have added to Pakistan's overall energy production. So this is at least some kind of positive step. They have also built some new transport infrastructure, and they're in the process of building more transport infrastructure, roads and railways in Pakistan. So there is some progress in those areas. But in terms of transforming Pakistan's economy, it hasn't transformed Pakistan's economy so far. Pakistan is still struggling economically. It has huge debts. It doesn't have much cash reserves, has very low cash reserves, is constantly short of cash, constantly looking for cash injections. The Americans who were providing support to Pakistan, especially after 9/11, especially in the era of when they were, in Afghanistan, just gone into Afghanistan, and they were hunting Osama bin Laden, and that they were pouring some cash in at that point. But the Americans have scaled back their investments, and it's almost down to zero. They're almost giving nothing to Pakistan now. So Pakistan's got this hole it's trying to fill, and there are only two possibilities that it's found to get some investments. One is the IMF, which isn't ideal because then the long term you've got to pay it back, and it's a problem with the IMF. And the other possibility is China, right? So China's really shoring up Pakistan, and I think this is a problem of it, that China doesn't want to be in the position of just pumping cash into Pakistan and not getting any returns from it, right? They want to see some return on their investment. So if it's transformed Pakistan's economy, I think the evidence is absolutely it has not. The other issue of it is, with the China-Pakistan economic corridor, we would expect increased trade. We'd expect that Pakistan would be trading more with China, would be benefiting more from trade with China. But the statistics show that Pakistan's share of overall trade has actually gone down in the CPEC era. It's actually lower than it was before. It's been on a steady decline for years, and they have the balance of trade deficit has been increasing, as it has in many other countries, right? China has been, Chinese exports to Pakistan far exceed Pakistani exports to China. So that we don't see a transformative effect from CPEC on Pakistan's economy so far. Pakistan still has the same problems it had before. It has added some energy, but the problems with the energy are, polluting energy from coal, so pollution is presumably increasing. Some of these dams, what are the environmental impacts of the dams? It's not really clear because we don't see transparent sustainability studies. And even in the energy sector, there are complaints in Pakistan that there's more energy, but the energy costs are still high and there are still blackouts. So there's still a long way to go, even with transforming Pakistan's energy sector. So it's not transformative so far.
And do you see the China-Pakistan economic corridor as something that can contribute to the Greater Belt and Road Initiative?
I would say, at the beginning, I thought yes, but having looked at the evidence, I just really don't. I'm really doubtful about it. I think it's just these projects are all just taking place in Pakistan on their, in isolation within Pakistan, most of it. It's not really adding to it. I think the one thing that I've seen recently that I would say is, from at least the Chinese perspective, perhaps a possibility is more like the digital Silk Road, because the one thing they have put in is this fiber optic cable across the border. There's new fiber optic cable, and according to, I just read a book by Jonathan Hillman about the digital Silk Road, and I hadn't realized that he says that the Chinese have laid an underwater cable from Gwadar to Africa, and they've linked this up with the fiber optic cable. So this is in terms of the internet connections through Pakistan from China, there's perhaps, you know, that's definitely something new that we haven't seen before. That's maybe China's better linked to the world, to Africa. So this may be in some way contribute to the Belt and Road Initiative. But I think in terms of like this infrastructure and trade, I think the benefits are really limited, because especially if we're looking at Gwadar Port, the trade volumes through Gwadar Port are very, very low. It's not making much impact. Most of the trade is still going into Karachi Port, which it was, you know, that was already there before, and it's you know, maybe there's a potential for trade to increase at the Karachi Port, but at Gwadar Port, I don't think we see anything transformative. So in terms of connectivity to the rest of the Belt and Road Initiative, I'm a bit doubtful about that it's going to make much difference. And you know, another thing I analyze in the book is there's a lot of talk in Pakistan from Pakistani media or Pakistani scholars that CPEC is a game changer, which, as I analyze in the book, it's not really clear what game they are referring to, but some of them seem to be referring to a regional transformation. Some seem to be referring to the transformation of Pakistan's economy. But whatever way we look at it, it's not really changing any game. So far, the results are very limited, and we're not seeing a transformation of Pakistan's economy so far.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeremy. It was really good to listen to your insights, and thank you for your contribution and for being here today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.